Welcome to episode 232 of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is a member of the 51st state, Scott Wright
Ooh.
from Ottawa, Canada.
Who gave you that information?
Oh, I don't know. I found it on the internet somewhere.
Oh, I guess it must be true then. Okay.
It has to be true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Canada is not the 51st state.
Yeah. Not as far as we know.
Yeah. No. And I don't think you want it to be at this point.
I don't know if I can even comment on that. That's I'm not even going to touch it. But we do have a very similar national holiday. So tomorrow is July 1st, Canada Day. And I should have my Canada flag up behind me, but didn't have time.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And then the 4th of July for us in the U.S. is coming up as well.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So maybe there's some truth to that, that rumor.
Well, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't think those dates have gotten any closer, though, over the years. I think they're usually 3 days apart.
They usually are. Yeah. Well, congratulations on your independence, and we will celebrate ours as well.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
So how are you doing?
So we have some. I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. Just been very busy.
Yeah, that's cool. Kevin's not with us today.
No. Kevin is not with us. He's at a conference. I think he's presenting today. But yeah, he is busy with his company, Secure Ideas. So
it's just
we'll
us.
let him off the hook this week. It's just us. But well, back to how it used to start, how it started, right, Scott?
I think
just you and me.
Yeah, that's right. So cool. So what are we talking about today?
Oh, we have several very interesting stories. So the first is about now I do want to just have a disclaimer that this is not a political discussion by any means, and it's amazing how many times I've had to say that with Kevin on the show and then it somehow slips into mainly Kevin's opinion of politics.
Well, yeah, there could be a bit of name calling and punching of throats and things, but
yes, and violence and things like that. Yeah. But we're keeping this very, very civil and only talking about the facts, but
just the facts.
Yes. So I'm sure everyone in the world knows about the Roe versus Wade being overturned, the abortion ruling here in the United States, and no matter what side you fall on in regards to the abortion issue, there are some privacy ramifications that are being discussed because of that ruling. And one of those things is around period tracking apps that, and I didn't know if you knew this, Scott, but in the US, at least, nearly a third of women are using some type of period tracking app.
Wow. I did not know.
It's a large number of women. Yeah. And so there's obviously now a concern with the abortion ruling, and that now going to the states, and states can kind of decide on their own if it's legal, if it's not.
Yeah.
Gray areas, all of that. It's going to be this patchwork across the United States. There is concern now that in states, especially states where it is illegal or will be illegal, what does that mean in terms of data privacy if, say, one of those apps gets subpoenaed to give data over to the government or the local state governments where an abortion could be illegal. So there's some kind of concern about what does that all mean now with these apps? Should you delete the apps? What are kind of the alternatives? But the bigger story out of that, I think, is that, and as we talked about on the show before, once states or even federal governments start subpoenaing, getting this data and trying to use it for things, it opens up a door that you may not be able to close.
Yeah. There's going to be a whole lot of other,
no matter the issue.
Yeah, other issues, other apps, I'm sure, that could be affected in similar ways.
Yeah, it's very similar to how the U.S. government has wanted to backdoor encryption in apps. And as soon as you let one thing happen, it could have a cascading effect to other things. So, and that's why I bring this up, is like, more than just the abortion issue, and no matter what side you fall on, I think there are privacy things that everyone needs to think about.
Yeah.
Especially here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's like uncharted territory almost.
It is. And another question that I've seen posted quite a bit on Twitter was, is the data that's in these period tracking apps considered health information, private health information that under the U.S., right, is that applicable to HIPAA or HIPAA laws in the U.S.? And the answer is no.
Really? I would have
this information
voted
is
yes.
not. Yeah, it is not protected by HIPAA at all. And so that's a lot of people think it is, but it is not at all. So that is just something to note, when thinking about, well, why doesn't the federal government, say something?
Yeah.
Well, they're not, because the data is not.
That's
covered.
A really interesting question. So, like, is the date of your last doctor's appointment not personal health information?
That I don't know if I can answer.
Doctor,
I'm not an auditor. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV.
Well, we could ask our audience, and I'm sure we'll get some answers. But
that would be an interesting question. I do know that the information you give your doctor during a doctor's appointment obviously is protected, as well as the information in your health record is protected information. But outside of that, I think there is a gray area. Putting in, tracking information like dates of your periods and things like that, that is not protected information.
Interesting. Wow.
So, and we'll have some links in the show notes. There are lots of different apps that do track periods. And what's interesting is, obviously, from a privacy perspective, people are recommending that you only use apps that store data locally on your device versus up in the cloud. So there are some companies that say they do that, some don't. And then, of course, there's low-tech options, right? Like just keep a spreadsheet or a paper calendar.
Yeah, geez.
And just do it
old school,
for the ultimate privacy.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Wow, the world is so complicated now.
It really is. So, all those links in the show notes. I think it's definitely. This obviously can vary depending on the state that you live in the United States, in terms of, like, people may say, well, what's my risk level? I think it is one of those things that, like we've talked on the show before about, even if you're not doing anything wrong, or you don't even plan on having an abortion, or don't have an abortion at all, there are concerns that your data can still be subpoenaed in a large group of people, right? If say a whole company gets their data subpoenaed, you're now part of that data set.
Yeah.
So,
and even mistakes happen, right? We've talked about that before in other kinds of data gathering. And, you may not be doing anything wrong, but your data might be mistakenly tagged and targeted.
That's right. Every hack follows the same pattern. First, hackers exploit a human error, like a leaked key or a secret left in code. They gain a foothold and then pivot, moving from one compromised system to the next. Sound familiar? Teleport breaks this cycle. Open source Teleport gives every engineer, every piece of hardware, every application an identity, replacing secrets like passwords and keys with auto-expiring identity-based certificates. The Teleport platform reduces the opportunity for human error, increasing productivity and revolutionizing security and compliance. Learn why the most visionary businesses in the world choose Teleport at goteleport.com. All right, so Scott, let's jump into our segment, Aware Much?
Yes. So Aware Much is brought to you by ClickArmor, the first fully gamified security awareness training and engagement platform. So you may have heard of BEC, or business email compromise, which is usually about an organization's internal email getting taken over, right? And you can imagine the kinds of things that can happen where you get fake messages asking people to make payments and all that kind of stuff. That's been a huge problem. And in fact, it was the majority of, these business email compromise was financial I guess, wrongdoing or fraud from impersonated accounts that were internal to an organization. But now, according to Abnormal Security, the tracking, they track this kind of information. They're a security company that deals with these kinds of things, and they discovered that there is something now called vendor email compromise. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, with supply chains, you're dealing with payments to customer or payments to suppliers, and that form of financial fraud is actually outstripping the business email compromise that comes from internal compromised accounts. So it's a growing problem with supply chains, and I think it's 52% in May. It was over 50% of all these types of compromises were happening as a result of external vendor emails being compromised. And, it could involve fraudulent payments. It could be changing your payment information. I think one of the attacks was documented that they stopped that was worth $2.1 million. So huge amounts. And the article we're going to reference, talks about a few different types of these. We're not going to go into, but really it's hard to stop the ones where it's coming from legitimately compromised accounts, where the attackers are actually sending messages from legitimate email accounts that they've taken over. But there are variations, as we said. So it's really a difficult problem that's growing, and especially when it goes outside the organization, you don't always have control over, how these things are approaching you, and they can be very convincing.
Yeah, this one is interesting. I see it as a change in tactics, right? That, I think, as they call it, like the traditional BEC attack still works, right? Where you have an employee, you get an email from a fellow employee or a peer or your CEO, right? Telling you, hey, I need you to do this thing or click this link or what have you.
Yeah.
And now that's evolving to a trusted vendor, right? Or a third party that the company works with, because we talked about how easy it is to find information about a company through just Googling and open source intelligence and other things. And so the attackers are now leveraging that attack vector because it's also working. Because I think and maybe this is a question for you, Scott, and like from the awareness perspective, right? We've been training people to say, hey, if you get an email from somebody call that person or do something out of band. But now we're talking about a company or a process that someone might be familiar with. I don't know if that's talked about.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't know that I've seen a lot of talk about it. When I'm teaching courses, I usually say, it's a good practice to have a threshold amount where if something is going to be made a payment, whether it's internal, external, whatever, that over a certain amount, you want to get a second authorization on that transaction. And I even go further and say it's not even necessarily financial transactions, because all the scenarios we talk about are usually, invoices, and those always go to the accounts payable people, right? But what about if somebody was sent, maybe somebody who is a software librarian who takes care of your GitHub, right? Gets an email from the CTO saying, we need to add this guy with admin rights to your GitHub account, right? All of a sudden, it's not just financial, it's stealing of code or infection of code and things like that. So it's a huge problem.
Yeah. And it's not getting any better anytime soon.
That's right. So this installment of Aware Much is brought to you by ClickArmor, the first fully gamified security awareness training and engagement platform, where we can do virtual inbox phishing simulations, which are completely different from live phishing simulations. Rather than sending out real emails to people, which has, I think I've documented 14 pitfalls of doing that process properly. This is a much more inclusive and positive experience for people, where we actually get more data from them and it's more reliable. So also, I put together a set of tips. It's a PDF of just tips that you can pass on to your employees or that you can use to build a better program. These are all a collection of posts and articles that I've written over the last several months. You can get that at clickarmor.ca and look for in our resources for advanced tips and tricks for security managers. So that's it for this installment of Aware Much.
Thank you, as always, Scott.
You're
always
welcome.
A great segment. So let's move to our last story, which is about the LockBit ransomware bug bounty program.
That sounds a little odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, this does. Actually, this was a link. Kevin had posted this on our Reddit community, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out our Reddit community, please do so.
You must. Yes.
You can find that on the Shared Security Show subreddit, which links are on our website and pretty much everywhere we post the podcast. But, Kevin had made a comment that he's the amount of money that is being offered in this bug bounty program is pretty significant. And this is the first time I've seen a large ransomware operation leverage, in the community, what we've known as a bug bounty program, right? Where there's a company like HackerOne or BugCrowd, and these companies that source these, security researchers that can submit bugs and then get paid by those companies for those bugs. They're basically doing the same thing, but to fund and fuel their ransomware operation. And it's not just bugs that they're asking for. They're actually asking for any type of information like, personal details about
vulnerabilities,
the person running.
Okay.
No, information about the person that runs the LockBit ransomware, like the person in charge of everything. And they want to know, what types of personal information can you find? Could any of these details lead to maybe the arrest of, say, this leader of the ransomware group? So,
okay. I was confused. I thought the ransomware group was offering that. No,
they're offering, $1 million, basically. They're even saying, even to FBI agents or ethical hackers, if they can uncover who this person is, they'll pay them $1 million. Yeah, so I think this is just another evolution, right? Where we just haven't seen this before, where attackers now are leveraging and copying off of what the good guys are doing to essentially increase their wealth and, of course, increase the amount of information that they're receiving to protect their business, because this really is a business now. And I think because they've opened this up to both ethical hackers, the black hat hackers, and even the government officials, I think it's going to get interesting to see where this could potentially go.
Yeah, it's attackers are all about best practices, right? So
they are, because they see what works in the security community, and it's interesting. All right. Well, it sounds like that is all we have time for today. And with that, we will let everybody go and talk to you all next week.
Bye, folks.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. To catch all the latest from the show, visit our website, sharedsecurity.net. Follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and join our Reddit community on the Shared Security Show subreddit.